welcome to Aldebaran Resources Live Summit today. I'm pleased to introduce our speakers, Chief Geological Officer and Director, Dr. Kevin B. Heather, as well as CEO John Black. Kevin's going to take us through a presentation today, following which we'll have a live Q&A session. If you'd like to ask any questions, please do so using the Q&A chat found on the right-hand side of your screen. And as always, I'd like to remind you that today's summit is being recorded. It's going to be available in the coming days on 6.com. Without further ado, John, I'd like to hand things over to you to get us started, just with a brief introduction of today's news and update.
Okay, great. Thanks, Cam, and thanks to Six for providing this format for us. And just wanted to take a short bit of time today and let everyone know that we're kicking off our 2022-2023 drill campaign. Got a first rig up on the hill, a second one on its way, and we'll have a third here in a few more weeks. So we're pretty excited. It's going to be a very interesting drill campaign coming up this season. Kevin's going to walk us through why we're so interested in this project at this point and the potential it has to grow substantially in size with by using the drill bit as we're coming up. So I'll just kick it over to Kevin, and he'll walk us through what we're going to be tackling here in the next few months.
Thanks, John, and welcome everybody, and thanks for tuning in. For some of you, depending on what time zone you're in, probably pretty early in the morning or late in the evening. So I'm just going to switch over and share my screen here, and we'll get going. So as John mentioned, what I'd like to quickly take you through is just really some of the conceptual ideas and some of the first holes we'll be drilling as part of this new drill campaign at Altar. Because we are traded on the TSX Venture, this is a disclaimer. I will be making forward-looking statements during this presentation. Just for those of you who are maybe tuning in and don't know where the project's located, we're located in northwestern Argentina in San Juan province. That's one of the more mining-friendly provinces within Argentina. And within San Juan, we're located down here in the southwest corner, right near the border with Chile, just across the border from the producing Los Palambres copper porphyry project of Antofagasta Minerals, and about 25 kilometers north of Glencore's El Pachon, and about 60 or 70 kilometers south of McEwen Copper's Los Azules. So we're in the land of giants. So where did we leave off? Well, many of you will remember that we shut down our campaign from last year in June of this year due to heavy snowfall, which forced us to basically abandon the program. You can see some winter shots there from the big snowstorms that we had. So we spent a lot of time trying to dig everything out and get everything off the hill. And then upon that, we spent some time this past winter here in South America, summer up north in the Northern Hemisphere, basically refining our drill program for this year. So where are we at? Well, we spent October of this year cleaning the roads to get access to the camp and to the project. And there were areas where the snow was very, very deep, where it had drifted. But we managed to get up to the camp. The camp is fully operational, and we've now got roads into all of the first 3 drill pads to start drilling once the rigs arrive. As John mentioned, we actually have a rig on site. This is a photograph that was taken yesterday. The rig is drilling. And we just have a few meters into that hole, but we are up and operational. The second rig is due to arrive sometime this weekend. So hopefully by early next week, we'll have 2 rigs turning. And then the third rig is showing up in early December. So just to recap why we're excited. Back last year, we terminated the large geophysical program. We finished our geochemistry surface sampling program. And this is just a plan map showing the conceptual pit outline here in the black line from our 2021 resource calculation. And what I've superimposed on here in the white dashed line is the large conductivity feature that we got from our 3D MT resistivity survey that we performed. And what I've superimposed on here is all of the drill holes from Altar Central and Altar East. And also, just as an example, we've put some of the results, in this case from gold, in the Talus Fine geochemistry. And you can see that the geochemistry, not just in terms of gold, but we have multiple other elements like copper and molybdenum and arsenic, antimony, bismuth, lithium, a whole bunch of different elements that are showing us that this is a very large system. And the part that's very interesting is that there's this area down to the south that has coincident geochemistry and geophysics, but has never been drilled before. And that's where we started last year on hole 222. But because of the aforementioned large snowstorm, we had to shut that hole down at 7 meters. So the rig that I just showed you that's just started drilling again is on that hole and is drilling that hole as we speak. So now I'd just like to take you on a quick cross section through the holes that we drilled last year, 220, 221, just to refresh your memory. Here we can see the pit outline from the 2021 resource. We can see the drill holes with copper grade in them. And then we can see on top of that is the block model for copper in the sort of cloud. And then underneath that, we see this large geophysical anomaly. And we can see that when we drilled hole 220 and 221, they both hit interesting intercepts, and especially hole 221 hit a very long intercept of over 1,000 meters. I don't want to belabor this at this time. This is in a past webinar that I gave dated in August 22nd of this year. So I will refer you back to that webinar to get more details on this part of last year's drill campaign. So moving forward, I'd now like to show you why we're excited about the first 3 holes that we will drill this field campaign. First, I'll take you and show you a section A prime that goes parallel to drill hole 222, the hole that we are currently drilling on. So this is a view, and now we're looking towards the northeast, and you can see the geology on this side. We have andesites in green, rhyolites in blue, and an intrusion. And you can see hole 222 here, based on the knowledge of what we think the geology is out here. But again, this is all very hypothetical because there's no drill information. And you can see the magnetics here showing a very large magnetic feature. So that's a positive, because we know that in many instances, mineralization is associated with very strong potassic alteration that's got magnetite with it and gives this kind of magnetic response. This just shows that there's a zone of secondary copper mineralization. And so this hole will definitely test to see if there is any extension inside the pit shell. And you can see the pit shell right here. So this is an area where this hole will really be doing 2 things at the same time. It'll be testing a large geophysical feature, but it will also be testing an in-pit area that's currently designated as undefined waste. Because there's no drill holes there, we have to treat it as waste in the resource calculation when we're floating this pit in Whittle. And so here you can see the chargeability. This just shows the gold and the copper in the block model. So you can see this drill hole will drill in an area that's completely currently outside the block model and the resource. And these are the large geophysical anomalies, both the 3D MT resistivity, in this case conductivity, and this is the DC IP resistivity. It's just another methodology, and I've gone through this in previous webinars. But this is a very large conductive feature, and you can see how most of the mineralized drill holes historically occur within that large anomaly. So this is testing a very large area. And again, just for reference, that's roughly about 2 kilometers across. So it's a very large feature here we're talking about. This is just in a bit of an oblique view to kind of put this drill hole into a bit of perspective for the project. And we're looking here to the southwest. Here you can see the conceptual pit shell. Over here is the QDM radio area, and here you can see Altar Central. We're showing copper with the copper block model, so all the blocks falling inside the pit shell or in the current resource. And you can see this hole's drilled out here in an area that's right now defined as waste. And on top of that, I've laid the talus fine geochemistry, in this case copper, and you can see it's lighting up this area quite nicely. This is just showing gold, and again showing that there's not only just a copper anomaly here, but also a gold anomaly. This is showing molybdenum. There's also indications of a molybdenum anomaly here as well. And this shows the chargeability. So clearly out here, more pyritic material probably. And so we're aiming for in here where we suspect there should be more porphyry style mineralization. And this is the large heart-shaped resistivity feature, in this case, conductive feature. And I think this gives you an idea on the scale of this anomaly and how this hole is going basically into an area previously never drilled before. And if we have any kind of success there, opens up the possibility for follow-up drilling. Moving on, we're also excited about drill holes up to the northern part of Altar East here. And I'll now show you a cross-section BB prime, and we're going to look towards the east. And again, we can see our geological model where we can see in red are the intrusive rocks, in blue are the rhyolites, in green are the andesites. And we can see another intrusive body sitting in here in the gray. This is based on information that we've got from the current drilling. So hole 223 is going to give us new information down here because there's currently no drill holes down here. And again, you can see it's going into an area with high magnetic character. Again, suggestive that there could be potentially some kind of potassic alteration with magnetite, which is typically associated with some of the better copper mineralization on the project. This again shows there's secondary supergene copper, here. And you can see that this will also allow us to establish a step out. Again, it's drilling in an area that's currently being defined as waste. And this will also allow us to potentially extend some of that secondary copper that's amenable to heap leach technology and cheaper capex. So we could be able to expand the resource of secondary copper. But also this hole is trying to drill down below what we saw in some of these other drill holes above here, which we feel were never drilled deep enough. And here you can see this is the chargeability. So we're going into an area that's of slightly lower chargeable character. Also, what's really attracted us to this area is some of these previous drill holes here, which again, were not drilled very deep, have very interesting looking quartz stock working. Again, these are up in the leached area. So the copper here has been stripped out, but there is still gold. We're also seeing some very interesting looking brecciation, suggesting that we've got more magmatic activity. And then we also start to see what we really start to think is quite important in other areas of the project is these A veins of quartz and also what we call USTs, unidirectional solidification textures. These are all indicating that we're potentially into a porphyry intrusion that's bearing the mineralization that we're looking for. So again, you can see we've got gold up here in that same area. The copper has been stripped out, and you can see that there. And then you can see the secondary copper here. And you can see that there's virtually no drilling down here, so there's currently no resource. So this is really drilling into a previously untested area. And again, you can see it's very much penetrating the central portion of this very large geophysical anomaly like we saw with some of the other drill holes. Also now would like to show you drill hole 224, which when the third rig shows up, that's where it will drill. So now we'll look at a cross section CC prime and we'll look towards the east again. And again, same geology legend here. We see in red the porphyry intrusion, the rhyolites in blue, the andesites in green. And what we can see here that's quite interesting is our modeling currently shows that there's a lot of rhyolite up here, but the magnetics suggest otherwise, that potentially there could be more favorable host rocks, or possibly, again, that this porphyry intrusion and the other one here that have been modeled could be much larger based on the magnetics. Again, we've got a chance to extend the supergene enrichment blanket in an area that's currently defined as waste. And you can see there could be potential to drill additional holes over in this area as well for exactly the same reason, because many of these holes were never drilled deep enough. Again, here we can see gold sitting above, which is always, we see that there's some gold that's still in the rock after the copper has been stripped out by the supergene leaching process. And here you can see that copper in the supergene, and all of these holes bottomed in mineralization and were never drilled deep enough. So this is going to be a very interesting hole, because once again, it's going to be going into the heart of one of these large geophysical targets here. And there's also another example here where you can see this historic drill hole almost stopped before it got into this, what looks like a very interesting anomalous area. And so this is another area that could eventually be an area for follow-up drilling as well. And this is kind of low-hanging fruit potentially, because like I mentioned, this is currently being defined as undefined waste. So any kind of success we have there to convert any of that to mineralization will help us in the long run here. And so now just another oblique view. Here we're looking to the southeast. I particularly like this view because we get to see the three main principal centers of mineralization. We get to see the QDM radio area, we get to see Altar Central, we get to see Altar East, and then we see this large area in between where hole 221 went in right there all by itself. And just for reference, you can see down here is the Aldebaran Altar campsite right here. And this is the access road coming up into the project. And you can see the collar of where hole 222 is, and you can just see it poking through there. But it's basically behind the picture we're looking at here. And so what we're looking at here is we can see the conceptual pit shell right here. In the drill holes, we see copper percent. And then in the cloud here, we see the current resource blocks. And so you can see that currently, at least in this particular cross section, there's a lot of resource blocks that are currently not being reported to our resource because the pit shell is up high here. And so by drilling, you can see there's where hole 222 is going to go, or 223, sorry, and 224 right there, basically into an area of no man's land. And you can see the surface geochem. This is what the gold looks like. So we can see we got high gold sitting right in this area. This is the molybdenum. And then this is the chargeability. So there seems to be a fairly large body in here of lower chargeability surrounded by chargeability. And this goes right into the heart of, as I mentioned earlier, this large resistivity feature or conductivity feature. So just to wrap up here, this is a fairly short presentation today, but this is just an overall view of the entire project. Again, we can see Altar Central with its drill holes. We can see Altar East with its drill holes, Altar North, the QDM radio area, and the Altar South target here, which is where hole 222 is currently now drilling. And what I just wanted to show you here is that we do also have some other targets that we will be hopefully trying to do more field work on this campaign. And eventually, if justified, we will try to maybe drill test some of these. So this is the surface talus fine geochemistry, and what I'm showing here is copper, and you can see copper very nicely illuminates the Altar Central area, the Altar East area, and clearly the Altar South area, also the QDM radio area, but it's also picking up an area to the south of QDM, what we call QDM South, and then this large area down here, which we call Sinacero, which last year we started building this access road, and we got it about 75% complete. So once we get all of the pads ready and finished over in this area, we'll move some of the earth moving equipment over in here and complete this road and get in and do more detailed surface prospecting, mapping, and sampling, and hopefully define some drill targets on this. And this just shows the gold the copper. This first one was gold, and this just shows the copper. And again, you can see how copper's lighting up the Altar Central, Altar East, Altar South, the QDM area, the QDM South, and then also the Sinacero area is lighting up quite nicely with copper. So we're quite excited about some of these far field satellite targets. But our main focus is going to be on trying to work on testing this large geochemical anomaly here at Altar Central and Altar East. So in summary, to wrap up, we've 3 rigs. We have the possibility of adding a 4th one in the new year. We're going to be drilling hopefully more than 20,000 meters. Multiple drill holes will test that very large geophysical anomaly, and from more strategic locations, with priority being given to those that I've tried to demonstrate to you that have more favorable geological or alteration indicators that we've gleaned from reviewing all of the historic drill holes in the vicinity and above that geophysical anomaly. The first drill hole is underway in hole 222. And where possible, the holes are also being designed, like I mentioned, to test within that current conceptual pit shell areas that were categorized as undefined waste due because of no drilling. And so these offer the opportunity to convert waste material to mineralization. And as I just mentioned, we also look forward to getting in on some of these additional satellite target areas, and depending on what we find, some of those may justify drill testing this year as well. So now I'd like to open it up for questions.
Absolutely, Kevin. Thanks for the great presentation. And thank you, John, for being here with us. As a reminder to everyone in the audience, though, if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask them using the Q&A chat from the right-hand side of your screen. This first question comes from Mike Fowles. And Kevin, it's in reference to the CNC prime cross section. Can the previous holes be extended, or do you have to drill deeper with an adjacent parallel hole?
In some cases, the problem is none of the holes were left open. Some of those holes are quite old, and so we're not able to go back into them, and we might spend more time messing around trying to get in. In some cases, we probably can, but in both instances where we're drilling right now, we're actually drilling the upper parts of those areas are areas that have not been drilled before. And so it is important that we do capture that upper part of the hole. But I understand the question, and we have historically gone back into old holes, but it's on a hole by hole basis, because sometimes it's very difficult to relocate the hole collars. And sometimes, like I said, some of the holes are very old and they've collapsed.
Fair enough. You've previously mentioned that the resource could be a lot bigger than what's been reported. Are there any copper mines in South America that you can compare it to in terms of potential scale and grade?
I can, yeah. I mean, the one that comes to mind for me is I get people to look at Cerro Verde in Peru. It's a mine. It's probably the 5th largest copper mine in the world. It's of similar scale and similar grade.
Great.
It's located just outside of Arequipa.
Awesome. Okay. Another question we've had is, when can we expect the first drill results from this campaign?
Well, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but we got to get the hole finished first. This hole is planned to go probably to at least 1,000 meters and may go beyond depending on what we see. So that's going to take us at least a month and a half to complete. And we don't know now because we've got new drillers. We don't know what the penetration rates are going to be like. So that's all. It's always every year is a wait and see how the drillers perform. And so we'll have to see. Right now, my understanding is the labs are working normally, but everybody else is starting up at the same time we are. And as we mentioned last year, this year is no different. San Juan is a very, very hot area. There's a lot of activity. And so there's going to be a lot of samples showing up at the lab. So I don't want to make any promises, but I can't imagine we'll have any results here until early 2023.
Fair enough. Jim's question, what steps have you taken to manage the rig issues you had last season? And how easy would it be to add a fourth or additional rigs if warranted by results?
Well, I can't go into all the nitty-gritty details, but we spent a lot of time and a lot of meetings with the drill contractor trying to really do a post-mortem on what worked and what didn't work last year and steps we could take to remedy that. And I think to both parties' satisfaction, I think we're on the same page and I think we're all rowing in the right direction. And so we'll see. I think we've got most of it solved. And that's why it's very difficult to get rigs right now in San Juan. And we elected to start with 3 because the drill contractor committed to giving us they could commit that they would give us good drillers to operate those 3 rigs. And the 4th one is still a wait and see whether we can get the crew. So it's not just about getting the rig, it's about getting crews that can actually make the rig perform properly and that you're not going to spend a lot of money fighting holes like we did last year. I don't know, John, if you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, Kevin, it's probably important to mention that 2 of the 3 rigs that we'll be using are larger rigs. So these are rigs that we believe will perform better, both in terms of the speed at which they drill. But one of the issues we had last year is due to rigs and drillers, we had our holes deviate more than we preferred. So we're quite optimistic, and the drilling company is as well, that these larger rigs will drill more quickly for us and drill more truly.
Yeah.
Great. Alan wants to know what the history of the property is, and also when was exploration even started?
I can probably cover that one. This project had an extended history. It was actually initially drilled by Rio Tinto in the late 1990s. They put the first couple holes into it based on what they saw on the surface, that strongly leached rock that Kevin showed. They thought they might be into a situation where they'd have a large secondary enrichment blanket similar to Escondida, and they concluded that it wasn't an Escondida based on a few holes only. They optioned the project off to Peregrine Metals, a Canadian junior company run by Eric Friedland, a group very similar to ourselves with similar objectives. And Peregrine drilled this project out up to the period of 2011, at which time they sold the project to Stillwater Mining for approximately $487 million consideration at the time. So they quite a success. It showed that it was a large project. However, the project, it was the purchase by Stillwater was thought to be not the best purchase by them for a number of reasons. And it wasn't really the price they paid. The price they paid for this project at that time was consistent with the sale of other projects on a price per pound of copper in the ground basis. But the project didn't really fit with Stillwater. Stillwater was a PGM mining company with a mine in the US. They were not really a company that was set up to develop a large copper deposit in South America. Their shareholders weren't terribly excited about the purchase, and the project stalled and remained within Stillwater. Also, it was a period of time shortly after 2011 when the markets deteriorated. So the project ended up in the wrong hands at the wrong time. and got stalled. A number of us were taking a look at the project to see if we could convince Stillwater to allow us to acquire the project. That wasn't moving along too quickly, but when Sibanye purchased Stillwater, that created the opportunity we were looking for. Sibanye determined that it was a non-core asset. It wasn't what they were purchasing Stillwater for. They marked the project for disposal, and they allowed those of us that were looking at it to submit indicative offers. And they liked the approach that we had, the offer that we made to acquire an interest in the project. So the agreement we have with Sibanye Stillwater is that we can acquire an 80% interest in the project for $15 million in cash payments, which have been made. And Sibanye Stillwater will have 20% of the project, will earn into 80% of the project, and they also received a 19.9% equity position in Aldebaran. So they have three ways to recover their cost in the project: the $15 million we paid, the equity position in Aldebaran, as well as they'll retain 20% in the project going forward. So we believe it was a good win-win agreement for both parties, and that's allowed us to move forward. In the next few months, we will reach that first $30 million of exploration that we have to do to earn 60% of the project. And then we'll be able to earn an additional 20% to go to 80% by spending $25 million more. So we're well on the way to the project. And you might ask the question, what's different about the project this time? We see the project as substantially different than what was known when Stillwater originally acquired the project in 2011. It's much larger. We've put a lot of work into understanding the deposit much better, a tremendous amount of technical information on the project that de-risks the projects and positions the project to be more attractive and more understood. We're also delivering a project this time into a much more robust copper market. As many of you should know, there's a looming copper shortage, and it's a great time to be delivering a project like this. And then finally, I think Argentina is very different today than it was in 2011 or about that time, in that it's much more receptive to mining. It's encouraging foreign investment. I think the country itself is emerging as a much better place to develop this style of project. So that's kind of the quick version of the history of the project. Thanks.
Oh, fair enough. Simile has a technical question here. So I think, Kevin, this is going to fall to you. As mentioned, drill hole ALD 22221 has a 1,059.5 meters of 40% copper equivalency. Did the hole have any indications that there might be a possibility to hit higher grades in the anomaly?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I suggest is that the person asking this question go back and review some of the other webinars that we've given. But to give a quick answer, all of the existing drilling at Altar Central and Altar East, in which there are some very high grade areas and long intercepts of high grade, occur within that geophysical anomaly. The current resource of over 1.2 billion tons of measured and another 200 million tons of indicated material all occurs within that geophysical anomaly. Only about 1/3 of that geophysical anomaly has been drill tested to date. So the answer to the question is yes, there are higher grades in that anomaly, and the anomaly is huge.
All right. Lastly has a question. Will you or are you considering directional drilling later on, like NGEX or NGEX Minerals is looking to do?
We've looked at the possibility of doing it, but here it's not really going to be a big saver at this stage because the anomaly is so big. We're talking about huge step outs. Where the directional drilling that some of those other groups are doing is probably the maximum step out you can get using directional drilling is maybe a couple 100 meters, and only over short distances you get that kind of offset. So really, what we're trying to do here is we're looking at a target that's probably much, much larger in scale. So it requires drill holes that are quite long ways apart from each other. When it comes time to trying to do more detailed infill drilling and raise the category from an inferred to indicated measured, yeah, that's a time when I think directional drilling probably will save money. I think a much better methodology is what one of the earlier participants asked was, is it possible to get into some of the old holes and basically drill some of those deeper? That's probably a way to maybe save costs more than directional drilling at this stage.
Absolutely. Will the current drill program lead to a resource update in the second half of 2023?
No, John, you want to?
It really depends on how much we complete and the nature of the results as we see them. I doubt we will by any means get to the edge of the full system on this. But if we consistently hit mineralization with the spacing that we're attempting to do, we could be in a position at the end of this season to do an updated resource. It would still be an interim resource, but if there's enough mineralization in those holes, it would make sense to do that at the end of the season, just to keep everybody up to date on what we're doing and monitor the progress going forward. But I believe, based on the size of the anomaly and the amount of work we can get done in a year, we will still have an additional campaign to really get to the full extent of the system.
All right. And John, I think you talked about this briefly in a previous answer, but maybe this is a good time to elaborate if required. But how do you view the current political situation in San Juan and Argentina with respect to the country's stance on mining?
Well, as we've discussed in other formats on this, when you look at Argentina, you always have to remember it's a federation of states. So each province has its own approach to mining or other activities. They can set their own tone as long as it doesn't contradict with federal law on it. So you get certain provinces that promote mining and would like to advance it. You get others where it's very difficult to mine in. So San Juan, Salta, Santa Cruz are all provinces that are very receptive to having mining. It's very notable. You see a lot of activity in the towns related to mining or attributed to mining itself. You see improved infrastructure. You see a general acceptance that mining is important to the economies. And it's notable that the economies in San Juan and Salta are both buzzing right now. And it's even well accepted by the general population that this is due to mining. So it's quite encouraging that way. We are seeing steps taken by the governments of the provinces and at the federal level to make it easier for us to bring funds into the country. And in some cases, they're working on the more interesting challenges of how can we get funds out of the country when you're into production stage. So they're certainly encouraging us to move forward. One of the things that I'd like to point out to people is that we're seeing a number of agreements being made recently by major international mining companies to either acquire assets or acquire interest in companies like ourselves. We have South 32 now as a partner. We've seen BHP come in for a substantial investment into Filo. We've seen Rio Tinto and a number of Chinese companies purchasing lithium assets in the northern part of the country. So we see Fortescue with interest in developing green hydrogen in the south. So these are major companies that would not make those type of investments if they don't believe that the environment is improving for mining investment in the country. So it's certainly a welcome relief. This is one of the more interesting parts of the world to work in right now in terms of being welcomed and being encouraged to move your projects along quickly.
All right. And where would you like to see the company by the end of the drill season?
By the end of the drill season, I'd love to see that we've confirmed that anomaly, that geophysical anomaly we see is consistently producing ore grade results, that we're filling the pit out, so we're reducing the strip ratio on that. Very likely being in a position to do an updated resource and show how we're advancing, not complete probably, but we'll be showing we're moving in the right direction. And setting ourselves up for further work to finalize the full size of the deposit and begin to enter into PEA type analysis of the project in the next 2 years.
All right. Well, look, John, Kevin, I want to thank you both for coming on and giving an insightful Q&A session as well as that great presentation, Kev. That's all the questions we have for today. So before we wrap up, I want to pass things back to both of you for an opportunity to have some closing remarks if you'd like to.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody for taking time out of, I'm sure, busy schedules for many of you to hear the story. And like I mentioned, I strongly urge people to go back and look at some of the other webinars that we've done on the project, and feel free to reach out with any additional questions. we're always open to, basically trying to encourage people to understand the story and realize that this is a great opportunity that, quite frankly, is not being fully given its dues. And that and there lies the opportunity for us, but also for investors.
Great. Yeah, I think Kevin covered a lot of it there. So this is an absolutely outstanding time to have your hands on an asset like this. These type of copper projects are few and far between. It's getting much harder for us to find these. And for those of us that do have them, I think we'll be well rewarded in the near future. There are many other projects or several other projects that are similar to this, but Kevin hit on a key point. Some of those have already received quite a bit of value added to the projects. As an investor, you're looking for a project like this that has all the earmarks of being a very large deposit, but maybe isn't fully recognized yet. And it's a better entry point to come in as an investment now with a lot more leverage to the upside. So please contact us with any questions you have. Kevin's put some great material on our website to help walk people through not just this deposit, but what our exploration philosophy is and how we go about exploring this. And we'd welcome any interaction from people to talk about the project. Thanks.